Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about the elections in Great Britain. It appears that as France is moving more and more to the right, and indeed to the extreme right and far right, at least in the first round of elections, where Le Pen, the National Rally, this extremist party on the right, got 34% of the vote and is expected to get very close to majority if the same pattern holds in the second round of elections in France. But in Britain, it's exactly the opposite. They say you drive on the right in Europe and drive on the left in Britain. Well, that seems to be the trend as Labour Party has won with an overwhelming majority. They have received or won 412 seats out of 650, gaining 214 seats in this round of elections as compared to 2019. And the Conservative ruling party, which has ruled for 14 years, has been devastated. They lost 251 seats and they have been reduced from the 370s to 121. In 2019, they came to power with a massive mandate, and now they have been sent out in a historical defeat. According to some accounts, they have not lost so badly in over 100 years. So let's talk about the British elections, what it means. But before that, do subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network after you have finished watching it. So let's begin by looking at the results across the party lines. So clearly the biggest winner is Labour Party, Keir Starmer. I don't even know how to pronounce the name correctly, Keir Starmer. Sir Keir Starmer is the leader of the Labour Party. He promised to change the Labour Party, make it a new Labour Party, very different from Jeremy Corbyn's. And so they've got 412 seats of a parliament that has 650 seats. The Conservatives have got 121 seats. They lost 251. The Liberal Democrats have 171 seats. They have gained 63 seats in this elections. The Scottish Nationalist Party has lost many seats. The Sinn Féin has won a few seats. But the next important party to look at is the Reform UK party of Nigel Farage, which essentially is the far right in Britain, and it has only won 4. According to the exit polls yesterday, their prediction was that the Reform Party would win 13% of the seats, but they really have not. And then if you look down, there is also the Green Party, which has only gained 3 seats, and they have won 4 seats. Nigel Farage's party is for the first time going to be represented in the parliament. So if you look at it, you can see that it's not just the Labour Party which has won. So the left of center parties, there are several which have done well, such as the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrat Party. So if you look at it, they got about 400. If you combine the Labour, the Liberal Democrat, as well as the Green Party, which are all more or less on the left, you could argue that they have received a pretty high percentage of the seats in the parliament. So the movement away from the right is significant. That is the point I'm trying to make. So all left of center parties seem to have gained. The Greens have gained, the Liberal Democrats have gained, the Labour. It's not that these parties work together. They are different parties, but nevertheless, the voter base clearly seems to be. But if you look at the vote share of the Labour Party, people are arguing that it got 34% last time, it got 33.8% this time, roughly the same amount of votes as last time. But the point that observers are making is that this election is not an election in which the Labour has won, but this is an election which the Tories have lost, the Conservative Party has lost. They ruled England for 14 years. They were losing. They won several elections, and they were in power for 14 years. And so the state of disarray in which England is. High inflation, low unemployment, bad economic situation, very low growth, and also the problems that come from very high immigration, unable to control those. All of this, on top of that, politicians were corrupt, constant changing of personnel. Apparently, they had 4 chancellors, basically finance ministers in 1 year, 5 prime ministers over the period. So this whole inconsistency, chaotic form of governance, instability essentially made people sick of the Conservatives and of the right-wing parties. And so basically this election is about throwing out the Conservatives. So they just voted for whoever was out there other than the Tories. So most analysts in Great Britain are interpreting this election as basically to kick out the Conservatives, to kick out the right-wing parties. But what you see is that Reform, which is the far right, has shown significant gains. In fact, an anomaly that I will talk about is if you look at the Reform Party, they got 4 million votes and they got only 4 seats, whereas the Liberal Democrats got 3.5 million votes and they got 71 seats. So the question really arises as to, well, what is happening in Great Britain's electoral system? I will talk about that. But the fact remains that if you had taken the votes that Reform got, which Reform was not on the roster last time, so if you add those 4 million to the 6.8 million that Conservatives got, they would get over 10 million votes. So basically what has happened is the amount of votes that were on the right remain roughly the same. The amount of votes on the left also remain the same. However, there seems to be a tremendous shift in who is governing. So Labour comes in with a massive majority in the country. I think partly because of the rise of Reform, which means that Conservatives wanted to be more radical than before, which essentially doomed the Conservative Party. Even though Rishi Sunak in the past few months had become as nasty as Nigel Farage when it came to immigration issues, he had moved a lot on the right. Apparently, the British expect their Conservative Party to be more about small government, accountability, financial growth, economic benefits, etc., and not cultural issues. And so Rishi Sunak went from being this financial whiz-kid to a cultural warrior, and that apparently also helped in turning people off towards Rishi Sunak and also the basically away from the Conservatives, and many stalwarts from that party also lost their election, plus also the many scandals that were going on about infighting. The Tories were fighting more with each other than with the opposition party. So Rishi Sunak sets a second record. He becomes the first Hindu Prime Minister of Great Britain. And also he becomes perhaps the guy who lost by the biggest margin in this century, which is quite a devastating indictment or condemnation of his leadership skills. Yes, he inherited a terrible government from the previous prime ministers, but he did very little to improve the chances of the Conservatives. So let's look at this scandal or this debate that has suddenly blown up. Especially, it's going to be raised again and again and again by Nigel Farage and his 3 colleagues in the parliament. So if you look at the column in terms of votes, the Labour Party got 33% of the vote, but it got over 60% of the seats. At 33.8%. So the biggest contrast is Liberal Democrats and and Reform. So Liberal Democrats got 12.2% of the vote and they got 71 seats, whereas the Reform Party got more votes, 14.3% of the vote. They got nearly 500,000 votes more than the Liberal Democratic Party, but they have only 4 seats. But what is also interesting is the Green Party also got nearly 2 million votes, but they got only 4 seats. So if you look at in comparison to Liberal Democrats, they should at least have got around 30 seats. So this issue of the difference between vote share and seat share is going to become a big issue. And so there will be a lot of talk as to the validity and legitimacy of the British system of governance. Of course, since this has happened to the right, it's going to be a big deal. But let me tell you, it was this very system which was in place in the past few elections that the Conservatives were winning, and then nobody was then talking about the system. The Labour didn't complain about the fact that there was a disparity in the amount of votes they were getting and the seats that they were getting. Nobody was complaining, and suddenly now that reform has got 4 million votes and only 4 seats, they are the ones who are going to be making a lot of noise in the process. So, for example, I have here a list of the vote share and seat share. So, if you look at the Labour, it got 34% of the vote, but it got 64% of the seats. If you look at the Conservatives, they got 24% of the vote, but only 19% of the seats. So there's a huge disparity there. The Reform got 14% of the vote, but only 1% of the seats. Liberal Democrats got lesser percentage of votes, that is 12%, but got 11% of the seats. So this is where the huge contrast is going to be made. And if you look at the Green Party, it's also 7% of the vote share and 1% of the seats. So this is not just hurting those on the right, it's also hurting those who are on the far left. So this is going to be a major thing that comes out, besides the question as to what are the differences between the Labour and the Tories. What can Keir Starmer do that Rishi Sunak could not do to shore up the British government, the economy, etc. The economy is in doldrums. It was nearly on the verge of going into recession. So what can he do? Unfortunately for the British, okay, let me first resolve this vote share point. There are lots of people who might be thinking, oh, this is so unfair to the Republicans and the right wing, sorry, to the Conservatives, etc. But let me tell you first, the Conservatives won in the same system for 3 times in the last 14, 15 years. They didn't complain. To give you an idea, this is also the kind of election that happens in many other parts of the world, including the United States. The system is, let's say that there are 4 people contesting in one constituency. The person who has the highest amount of vote wins, period. That's all. You have 1 round of elections. If you have 10 people contesting, everybody gets, say, 7%, 8%, one person gets 21% or 20%. It's the highest amount of votes. They become the representative. So you could see that you become a representative with only 20% of the vote. It's not like that in France, where you have a second round and you have to end up getting at least 50% of the vote. So if you look at the 2024 Lok Sabha elections in India, the parliamentary elections in India, the ruling party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, got 37% of the vote. So their vote share was 37%, but they won 240 seats. So 240 seats is much, much more than the vote share. If they got 37% of the vote, they should have got 200 seats, but they got 40 extra seats. Whereas the Indian National Congress, which won 22% of the vote, they got only 98 seats. But if you were to follow the Reform Party's arguments already, then the Indian National Congress should have won 190 seats and the BJP should have won only 200 seats if we wanted to draw parity between vote share and seat share. So it's not a big deal, but it has become an issue in the British elections because I guess the Reform Party is shocked, etc. So what difference can Starmer bring? On foreign policy, absolutely no difference. He has said it very clearly. He's going to be here at the NATO summit. So on the foreign policy, there might be one shift, which we will see about it. But whether it is Ukraine, whether it is the Middle East, or any other issue, the Labour foreign policy is going to be very similar to the Conservatives' foreign policy. There's some anticipation that there will be an increase in taxations and there will be more spending programs in the domestic issues. And I'm not really interested in, I don't have the expertise to discuss about the domestic projects, discussions about raising tuition in private colleges or taxing private schools, etc. So there are some other stunts he is going to pull to try. Apparently the manifesto was not very exciting or promising. That's why the assumption that Labour didn't win it, the public just wanted to get rid of the Conservatives who had become absolutely useless and incompetent in many ways. So Rishi Sunak's government was seen as incompetent, chaotic, and unable to do anything good. So that's why they just wanted to get rid of it. So this election was about getting rid of conservatives, not really celebrating or bringing in the ideas and policies of the Labour Party. But it is possible, and there's a lot of discussions going on, that Starmer may once again lean towards European Union. He is trying to seek some kind of a security partnership with Europe. He's also trying to seek some kind of economic relationship. So one of the reasons why people feel that British economy has not done well is because of its Brexit. So he's trying to, in some form or the other, without actually calling it so, but would like to reverse Brexit, or at least reduce or increase his relationships with Europe to such an extent that all the negative damage that he has got from Brexit does not continue to undermine British economic growth. But from the few debates that I watched on British television and read a few articles, I can tell you that I will be very surprised if he's able to make a U-turn on the economic situation in Britain. He might stabilize it, and people might feel more confident and may attract more investments. One of the biggest challenges for Great Britain was the lack of investments in its economy. So if you look at here, in percentage of GDP, China has the highest amount of investments, that is 43%, and then followed by India, and then Czechoslovakia, Japan, Sweden. So you can see all of these countries are attracting, and Great Britain is really at the bottom of developed countries, getting only 18.3% of its GDP is coming from total investments. So this is one of the challenges, and they feel that because the government is more stable and less chaotic, less corrupt possibly than the Tories, it is quite possible that there will be more investments in Great Britain, and so there will be some kind of stability dividend to the economy, and it might become better because they at least provide a stable government for a period of time. We shall wait and see how true it is, but it does make sense. Would you invest in a country where the leader is becoming more and more crazy, talking more about culture wars than economic policies? Or would you go and invest in a country where the leader is more interested in investing in the country and building its economy or rebuilding its economy, as Starmer likes to talk? And of course, the fact that he is probably going to be the prime minister as long as Labour is in power also says there is going to be stability in the government itself. So in that sense, it's quite possible it may attract increase consumer confidence. People might take more risks and start more businesses, etc. And so the economy could get better without any policy difference, except that you have a more stable government. Now, what Nigel Farage has done is brought this whole discussion. So when people ask this question, why is Europe turning right? The ordinary question that pops up is, oh, it is because of Muslims, or is it because of immigration? And so the country is basically trying to protect its religious, cultural identity. And a similar thing is what Nigel Farage has been saying, that, oh my God, all the problems in this country that we have are coming primarily from immigrants and then also from Muslim immigrants. So here is a graph that I want to show. If you assume Nigel Farage's argument that the country is getting worse and worse and worse because of immigration, and let's look at the post-Brexit immigration since 2019. So if you look in 2019, this is before Brexit, in 2019, the largest number of immigrants to Great Britain were Indians, 72,000. And in 2023, the largest number of immigrants to Great Britain are Indians, 250,000. So Indian immigrants are just the largest immigrants coming into Britain. That's 250,000, a quarter, a million in 2023. The total immigrations that came to Britain in this year was a little bit more than 700,000, they say. And so you're looking at about 1/3 of that coming from India. So every third immigrant that is coming to Great Britain is an Indian. The second highest is Nigerian. And look at the jump of the Nigerians. In 2019, it was 14,000 and 141,000 its Pakistanis are in the third position and only 83,000. So if you just compare India and Nigeria, that's 400,000, which is 5 times the Pakistani migration to Britain. And then again, you have Zimbabwe and then Ghana. So most of the migration that is coming is from developing countries, obviously, but not Muslim migration. So Nigel Farage's Islamophobia is misplaced. If he thinks it's because of immigrants, then it's not because of Muslims. So he has to talk about this. He keeps saying that, oh, the economy is getting bad, everything is getting bad because we are allowing so many more immigrants. Well, look at where the immigrants are coming from. So there's going to be, I hope there's going to be a serious discussion of immigration in the British Parliament, because Nigel Farage now will have time to raise these issues in the Parliament. So far, he's been raising it on right-wing television stations and radio stations, and a lot in the United States. But the biggest difference that you see from a cultural point of view is the decline of the European Union migration, which is actually unbelievable. There were 80,000 Europeans who came to Great Britain in 2019, and in 2023, 75,000 of them left Great Britain, went back to Europe, because economically Great Britain has been tanking, and Europe, they think that, oh my God, let me go back home to Poland. That looks much better than England does today. So they have a negative 193% migration coming. So this must be the problem that Nigel Farage faces. He's bloody racist. He thinks white people are not coming, brown and black people are coming. England is losing its values, basically is losing its racial composition to that. So that is why. And there are lots of people, obviously there are 4 million people in Great Britain who, or at least 4 million voters who agree with him. So this is going to be an interesting scenario to watch in England. What happens? How does Starmer try and restore confidence in investors as well as in the public to move forward and try to improve Great Britain's economy? It is the sixth biggest economy in the world. And it will also be interesting to see how serious is he in defending Ukraine and what positions he takes here. He has said that he's going to recognize the Palestinian state. So let's see what position he takes in the Middle East. He's called for a ceasefire, but he also said we support Israel's right to fight Hamas. But let us see what, orally, verbally, he seems to have the same foreign policy as Rishi Sunak, but let's see in substance when he's in power what he does. He has also promised to raise the defense spending to 2.5%. I think he will do that, but he would raise taxes, which would then again turn people off. So you can expect higher taxation. And needless to say, often higher taxation does have a negative impact on GDP growth rate, and they don't have much growth to lose. So it will be very, very interesting to see how Labour handles British economy. So I hope you found this discussion interesting, thought-provoking. So please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your friends after you watch it. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan.